General Jaroslaw Strozyk, who is a former director of the Polish military intelligence, and he joins us now live from Wrocław in Poland. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Why do you think this decision was made right now by Russia to establish a new general to lead the war in Ukraine?
This is simply, good afternoon, this is simply based upon the latest experience. It seems like we didn't have a real commander of the Ukrainian, as Russian called, special operations. We had three different directions, and each of them was commanded by a different general. So based upon this failure, based upon this bad experience, Putin is now appointing one of his favorite generals, the general with the successes. Whatever we call the success in Syria, but bombing civilians, it's not a success. But you mentioned his career, but you haven't mentioned also his experience during the Second Chechen War 22 years ago, when Putin came into power. So that's a change, the change of shift. And I believe that General Dvornikov, his main task is to build a good force, a show of force, a force that units that could have a Russian ratio, the advantage of 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and then in I believe 1 or 2 weeks to start the operation, and perhaps the main task to accomplish his mission by the Victory Day, 9th of May, which is a special, very special day for Russian people, celebration that could be made by that time.
So just to be clear, do you think his appointment, Aleksandr Dvornikov's appointment, will change the tide of the war in Ukraine?
I'm not sure. I hope the Ukrainians will survive. I mean, the military also equipped additional equipment, which is sent now from different countries to include Slovakia and Poland, as we hear. So that's my hope is that they can still beat Russians, or at least not to advance Russians into directions that they can make this corridor to Crimea, the full corridor, because they have the access now to Crimea, but they want to defeat Mariupol, perhaps they want to defeat Kharkiv. So this is the worst case scenario, but I strongly believe that Ukrainian armed forces will be still able to defend Ukrainian territories and to beat as many Russians as they could in the upcoming weeks.
And can I ask you this, as the former Deputy Intelligence Director at NATO's headquarters, what do you think of NATO's response so far? And given this change in leader now on the battlefield, should NATO change tact?
I believe that NATO proved to be successful, and providing information and equipment to Ukraine armed forces proved to be successful. So I don't think there should be any change in this direction. So let's stay with the successful tools and do what we did in those last 40+ days. Of course, Russians will be prepared better, much better than before, and that's something we should also be aware. But let's provide, from NATO standpoint, from NATO intelligence, as much as we could in terms of information and also in terms of equipment.
But will that, so to jump in, avoid another Kramatorsk, another shelling at 4,000 civilians standing there in a train station waiting to flee?
I am very much afraid that we will not refrain from such situations, and we cannot protect simply all Ukrainian cities by different equipment. Okay. This is brutality of this war, and I'm very much afraid that General Dvornikov nomination is another sign that this brutal war will be prolonged by Russians. So I am quite pessimist about the ability of NATO countries to protect civilians in Ukraine.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. General Jaroslaw Strozyk, thank you.
Thank you.